I am Dwight Drummond. Tonight, Toronto comes together to show its support for the victims of the Buffalo mass shooting.
Hey, you're a coward!
As the accused gunman makes a court appearance, a vigil is getting underway here for the victims. We'll have a live report from the scene. Plus,
we believe that the home invasion occurred in the Fort York Boulevard and Spadina Avenue area.
police make an arrest after a downtown home invasion, and the Lamborghini stolen was later recovered. And
we can act now.
We saw what happened with COVID-19.
just days after the debate, the NDP and Green Party leaders both test positive for COVID-19. A vigil is about to get underway at Nathan Phillips Square for the victims of Saturday's mass shooting in Buffalo. The event is honoring those who died and were injured, while also showing that Toronto stands against hate and terrorism. Alicia San joins us live now from there. And Ali, what can we expect tonight?
Well, Dwight, tonight will be a show of solidarity. It will show people of Buffalo that Toronto mourns with them. It also brings up the reality of anti-Black racism and how it exists anywhere, and people can face it anywhere. So tonight we'll hear from local leaders like Toronto Mayor John Tory and Toronto MP Marcy Ian about their commitments to weed out hate in our communities here. But essentially you could say that the regular people who will be coming by to pay their respects and light a candle will be making a pledge to do the same. But tonight is about more than solidarity and symbolism. There is a real call to action here. Some of the leaders organizing tonight's event say that we need to see all three levels of government work together with Black communities to come up with concrete solutions to weed things out like hate speech and radicalization online. I spoke with the organizer of tonight's event, Alka Hall, about just that. Have a listen.
I'm hopeful that the folks in Buffalo feel that sense of solidarity, that Black communities there understand that, we share their concerns, we share their fear and their needs. I'm also hopeful that those in Toronto and across the country see this really as a signal of resistance, a signal that we will not accept and tolerate hate as being part of our own communities, and that it's really a catalyst for conversation. Too often we are reactive. We want to do things after the massacre, after the murders, but we need to ensure this is an ongoing conversation and not just, be reactive to the situations as they come up.
There are 21 community groups from across the GTA involved in tonight's vigil, and Nathan Phillips Square will start to fill in soon. Speeches will be made, candles will be lit, and songs will be sung in solidarity for those who are grieving in Buffalo. Send it back to you, Dwight.
Thank you, Ali. Now, the man alleged to have carried out the shooting made another court appearance today. The 18-year-old appeared before a judge in Buffalo. He's pleaded not guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder. 3 other people were shot and survived. Also today, Buffalo's mayor announced that evidence collection at the shooting scene has wrapped up. A prayer service was also held for the victims. A luxury vehicle was recovered and a suspect arrested after a home invasion this morning. Greg Ross has the latest on that investigation.
Police recovered this stolen Lamborghini parked near Eglinton and Islington Avenues. They say it was taken from a downtown condo as part of an early morning home invasion.
We believe that the home invasion occurred in the Fort York Boulevard and Spadina Avenue area.
Inspector Paul Krawchuk says not long before they found the car, a male suspect was located and taken into custody with the help of the OPP. They don't believe the suspect was acting alone.
There is at least one outstanding, but likely more.
Police haven't released the name of the suspect in custody.
I saw the police this morning.
People who live in the building where the home invasion happened were surprised to wake up to the news this morning.
It's kind of scary, considering, like I said, it's a very safe neighborhood normally, especially because to get into the building you need to fob through the elevators, so that's definitely a little terrifying.
We always find this place to be pretty safe for everybody. As a matter of fact, I think this is a very safe family neighborhood.
At this point, police are providing very few details about the home invasion, other than to say that they do believe it was targeted and they are communicating with the victim.
I can tell you that the victim is okay. They have not required any first aid at this time.
At this point, police are not saying if the victim knows the suspects or if there's any potential motivation behind the home invasion. Despite the fact that police are still looking for more suspects, they say there's no threat to public safety at this time. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And as of today, Toronto police say they have seen 64 carjackings so far in 2021 compared to 59 in all of 2020. This year's figure includes another 3 vehicle thefts that were reported within a 2-hour window yesterday evening. Mayor John Tory is hinting at further police action to stem this uptick.
Stealing a car is one thing, and it's not a good thing, it's a bad thing, but putting the lives potentially of people at risk or endangering the safety of neighborhoods is just not something that we're going to accept, and I've certainly given the police chief my full support in doing whatever he feels that they must do in order to push back hard against this and bring these people to justice.
Police say the vehicles stolen yesterday were taken along residential streets in North York and Scarborough between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. All 3 took place near Shepherd Avenue East, as far east as Willowdale Avenue, and west as Dean Park Road. Detectives say in all 3 incidents, the victims were near their parked cars. When 3 men pulled up, blocking the victim's driveway, the armed suspects ran towards the victims, demanding their car keys before driving off in the stolen vehicle. No arrests have been made yet. Voters queued up this morning to cast their ballots when advance polls opened today across Ontario. This comes ahead of the provincial election on June 2nd. Nellie Collada has the latest.
Motivated and ready to vote, Celeste Kuhn is among those casting her ballot today at one of more than 650 advance polling stations across Ontario.
It's not been an easy couple years, so it'd be good to have someone who wants to make sure that people are supported even when they lose their jobs or when they get sick.
Today is the first of 10 days of advance voting in the provincial election.
I thought I'd just get it out of the way early. And I'd already decided, so just fewer people and stuff.
Just for my safety. I want to make sure that I'm not coughing on anybody, no one's coughing on me.
Not only are people turning up to cast their ballots today, but many are waiting in long lines to do just that. At this polling station this morning, the lineup to get in was over an hour long.
Get it out the way, not leave it to the last minute.
It's just really nice to have those extra days. It's not as crowded as it sometimes can be.
To help with that, Elections Ontario has doubled the number of days of advance voting.
Some people still don't want to be in areas where there are crowds. And also this gives them the opportunity of a date that's more convenient for them as well.
To check advance voting dates, times, and locations, voters can log on to the Elections Ontario website or download the Elections Ontario app.
We've got more ways and days for people to vote this election than before. They can apply to vote by mail. They can ask for a home visit. They can go to an advance poll. They can vote at their returning office between now and June the 1st, and of course on election day.
Voters can go to any location within their riding to cast their ballot. Just bring ID and the voter information card. If they're not yet on the voters list, then officials say bring a piece of ID showing your name and residential address. Election day is June 2nd. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
2 of Ontario's main party leaders have tested positive for COVID-19. It comes at a crucial time midway through the campaign. As a result, both the NDP and Green Party are shifting their campaigns. Loretta Redekop explains.
Nice to see you through this unfortunate situation, but it is what it is.
Not the photo op the NDP wanted. On the day Andrea Horwath was set to launch her tour of Northern Ontario. This morning, she announced on Twitter she tested positive.
Headache and sore throat. Not really bad, though. I've been taking Tylenol, and that kind of takes the fever down.
Last night, the Green Party leader announced he has COVID, saying a staff member had tested positive first.
I just want to say that I'm feeling fine, and that we're going to make the adjustments we need to continue building the momentum our campaign has right now.
This afternoon, his deputy leader filled in for him, supporting a rally by nurses.
Almost all of us have had this. We know what to do. You step up, you help each other, and we keep the job going.
All 4 main party leaders were close together, unmasked, for an hour and a half during the debate Monday night. Both Doug Ford and Stephen Del Duca say they've tested negative.
Because I'm a close contact of 2 confirmed cases now.
I will continue to monitor myself for symptoms, and I will continue to test.
We're following all the protocols from Dr. Moore, and I encourage everyone across Ontario to continue following the protocols.
Ford's campaign spokesperson says he doesn't have symptoms and it's been more than 48 hours, so he's not considered a close contact. One NDP strategist says the positive test is especially bad timing for the NDP.
The problem is that they've lost some support compared to the last election. So how do you transform that? How do you parlay that into a path to power is the key challenge for Horwath.
Another challenge, polls suggest Liberal support is growing as the two parties fight over who has the best chance to defeat Ford.
Mr. Ford, have you talked to a nurse lately?
For the Greens, it comes days after Mike Schreiner's well-received debate appearance.
It's kind of killing the little bit of momentum that he had, but the biggest impact of the campaign for him was by far the debate. It would have been way worse if he had caught COVID before it.
Even with their leaders in isolation, the NDP and the Green Party kept up with the politics. The NDP announced they'd cut the tolls for large trucks on Highway 407. The Greens said it was another example of the NDP following one of their policies. Loretta Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
A new report is looking at the last 4 years of climate policy under the PC government and bringing questions about the environment to the campaign trail. Lisa Shing reports.
Transportation is the single biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Ontario, yet PC leader Doug Ford is campaigning on building highways.
A re-elected PC government will say yes to building a new and expanded Garden City Skyway Bridge over the Welland Canal.
This government has been openly hostile.
These promises and the protections the PCs dismantled when they took power are why Environmental Defence released a report today. They're reminding voters the Progressive Conservatives cancelled cap and trade, which led to clean energy programs being cancelled, like upgrades to hospitals and schools. They also scrapped hundreds of renewable energy projects and electric vehicle rebates. And their environmental plan, tabled 4 years ago, hasn't been implemented.
They've been hostile towards endangered species, hostile towards protecting wetlands and natural spaces.
What do other researchers think?
This really is probably the worst environmental record of any government in Ontario in the post-World War II era.
Climate policy has not been at the forefront over the past 4 years. And in fact, there have been some significant rollbacks.
When asked about his record, PC leader Doug Ford said,
We took a different strategy. We're investing billions of dollars into people, into long-term jobs.
That strategy includes helping factories produce cleaner steel and investing in EV battery manufacturing. But this York University professor says that's not good enough.
These are good things, but in and of themselves, they are not going to get us anywhere near where we need to be on greenhouse gases.
The Liberals, NDP, and Greens have largely similar goals to each other for reducing emissions. They're also offering home retrofit programs and EV rebates. Now, environmental advocates say voters need to choose wisely because the next few years are critical. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The Supreme Court of Canada will hear the Ontario government's appeal on whether or not it will be able to keep PC leader Doug Ford's mandate letters secret.
That broad use of cabinet secrecy is allowed by the court. It will have serious implications for the right of journalists to know the priorities of government and to do their work.
Everyone knows where we stand. I'm out here every single day. You know, moving forward, it's going to be very, very clear what we're doing.
CBC Toronto filed a Freedom of Information request for the records in July 2018. Shortly after Ford took office, the government denied access in full, arguing the letters were exempt from disclosure. Mandate letters usually lay out the marching orders a premier has for each of their ministers after taking office and are routinely released. Had Canada's top court refused to hear the case, the provincial government would have had to release Ford's 23 mandate letters to CBC News today. The decision means the mandate letters will not be made public before the election. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is shining a light on hidden taxes that are making high gas prices even more painful for drivers.
We put out a report every year to let taxpayers know exactly how much they're paying at the pumps and how much of that is taxes. And so this year, we're here to present the highest number yet. It's almost 60 cents a liter in taxes when people are filling up at the pumps. That means $40 when you're filling up a minivan.
Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford's government announced a gas tax cut in April, but it's not set to take effect until July. The Taxpayers Federation says the average two-car family we've had already saved over $52 had the tax break been implemented immediately. Meanwhile, for any drivers thinking of filling up ahead of the long weekend, you might want to wait until tomorrow. Gas price expert Dan McTagg says after falling 3 cents today, fuel prices are set to drop another 10 cents per liter tomorrow. And with a lot of folks planning to open up that cottage or head north this weekend, or east or west, Colette, that's good news.
Yeah, I guess there is something a little special about this weekend, isn't there? Yeah, we're talking about the holiday weekend coming up and some really interesting things happening with the weather. There's just about going to be something for everyone in terms of the conditions we'll be seeing, but plenty of good stuff in there. Our daytime highs, 22 degrees, so we made it there for Toronto, 24 in Windsor. Look a little bit further east, though, for Ottawa, Kingston, cooler numbers there with more cloud cover. Not only that, with those rain showers kind of continuing there, we lost those in the morning hours and then got to see the clouds peeling away. I want to show you the dew points here as well. So notice Windsor is kind of creeping into the mid-teens, single digit for Ottawa, and we're just into double digits. But what we're going to find is we're nearly going to double that by this time tomorrow. And what that means is we're going to start talking humidex, because the humidity and how oppressive the air feels is going to be going up along with the temperature. Now, for now, we are kind of between two systems. What's going to be happening in the overnight hours is earlier on, we'll have a chance, especially north of the GTA, to get into some showers or leftover remnant thunderstorms. And then early tomorrow morning, that risk more towards the Niagara region. In between, we could get a stray shower also coming through the city. So I put a slight chance in there. Then for Friday, most of the day looking really great. Late day things change, and I'm going to talk more about that in this whole holiday weekend coming up. But look at that, Dwight, tomorrow 27, feeling like 34.
Perfect for a Friday of a long weekend.
There
Thank you
go.
Colette.
You got it.
Ottawa is banning Chinese telecom companies Huawei and ZTE from participating in Canada's 5G networks. The government cites national security concerns. It has taken years to deliver the decision. The government has been under pressure from the Conservative opposition at home and from international allies to bar the Chinese firms. The U.S. and Great Britain have already banned Huawei and ZTE. They also pointed to security concerns. Public health officials in Montreal are investigating a possible outbreak of monkeypox. Some suspected and confirmed cases are also being investigated in other countries. The disease, which is typically found in Africa, is transmitted through respiratory droplets emitted during close contact. Officials say it's not infectious enough to enter a phase of general community transmission. Lauren Pelly has more.
Today, Montreal public health officials said 17 possible cases are now under investigation. So that's 15 on the island of Montreal, 1 on the south shore, and 1 on the north shore. Now, officials are still waiting on lab results to confirm these infections, but the patients did have symptoms that suggest this could be monkeypox. That's ulcers on oral and genital areas, along with fevers, sweating, and headaches. Now, it's painful, but so far these cases are apparently not severe. Public health officials said the patients are mainly men who have had sex with other men between the ages of 30 to 55 years old. But to be clear, this is not classified as a sexually transmitted infection. Anyone can get it through a variety of ways. Things like close contact with another person, even touching contaminated surfaces like clothing or bedding.
We do not want to stigmatize any segment of the population. We want people to be aware of the concern, but also to keep it in perspective that what we're worried about is prolonged close contact, and it could happen in any sort of different type of setting. So that's what's important to remember here.
We're told that patients are isolating. Local physicians have also been put on alert for surveillance, increased surveillance of this virus in the community so they can report any suspected cases and hopefully break these chains of transmission. But I should note this is a problem on a global level right now. Cases are being reported in multiple countries. There was a patient in Boston who had travel ties to Canada, as well as cases being reported in Europe, in the UK, and Portugal, and Spain, both suspected and confirmed infections. Even so, Montreal officials are urging the public not to worry.
We do not have to panic at the time we're speaking. It is not something that is go to a community transmission that is going to be sustained. It's not something that you can acquire when you do your grocery store or in public transportation.
Now, all that being said, we've also heard from physicians that if you do have any of these telltale symptoms like strange unexplained lesions on your body, a fever, headache, so forth, that it's best to isolate and seek medical attention.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, Toronto public health officials say they are monitoring the monkeypox situation, but are not aware of any cases here. TPH tweeting today that they are getting questions from the public about the virus. They add it is aware of the suspected cases in Quebec. Now, officials say they will update the public should any cases be found in Toronto. We are midway through the Ontario election campaign. To take a look at what the polls are saying, we're joined by Eric Grenier. He is a poll analyst and writer at the website The Writ, and he's CBC's poll tracker for this provincial election. Eric, as we hit the midway point, we're also a few days past the final of the two leaders' debates. What are you seeing in the polls right now?
Well, we're not seeing a huge amount of shifts from the beginning of the campaign. In our poll tracker, which is an aggregation of all the polls that are out there, we have the PCs are leading with 36%, the Liberals are second with 28%, and the NDP has 23% support. So that's about an 8-point gap between the PCs and the Liberals. In 2018, a 7-point gap between the PCs and the NDP was enough for Doug Ford to get a majority government. So that's likely what we would have with these kinds of numbers. But we have seen the PCs, maybe their support soften a little bit over recent days. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the problem for the Liberals and the New Democrats is that neither of them have really taken advantage of that.
So what about local races? Are you seeing much movement there?
Yeah, there has been actually some movement in Toronto. Toronto, we're seeing the Liberals have been making some gains in the polls. The NDP has fallen further back into third place in the city itself. In the GTA and the suburbs around Toronto, though, the PC still hold a pretty big double-digit lead, and that's why they're still in such a good position to win a lot of seats. But that's really where the election is going to be decided. And so far in the GTA, it's been steady as she goes.
Now, the Progressive Conservatives have been keeping a low profile during this campaign, declining interviews. Now, when you look at other elections where parties have used that strategy, how successful has it been? Because it seemed like it worked for the PCs the last time out.
Yeah, and it's a classic front-runner strategy. You just try to avoid anything that could cost you the lead in the polls that you have. You know, if you think about Stephen Harper when he was prime minister, he did the same thing, avoiding the media. The media in Ottawa didn't like it very much, but voters was re-electing Stephen Harper's government, so it didn't really hurt him. But if we take a little bit of a history lesson, go back to 1985, Frank Miller, who was the PC premier at the time, he was avoiding the media. He didn't attend leaders' debates. And what happened was that David Peterson and the Liberals were able to occupy the space that Frank Miller was vacating, and the Liberals were able to end 42 years of PC rule in that election. What's different now is that I don't know if Stephen Del Duca and Andrew Horwath have been very successful at taking up that space that's been vacated by Doug Ford and the PCs.
Okay, Andrew Horwath and Mike Schreiner have tested positive for COVID and are now sidelined for 2 weeks of campaigning. With 2 weeks of campaigning to go, what kind of impact could this have then, Eric?
Yeah, obviously, first off, we just hope that they'll be all right. But yes, in terms of the campaign itself, it's very bad timing for both Andrew Horwath and Mike Schreiner. For Andrew Horwath, you know, the debate that we saw earlier this week didn't go particularly well for her. She needed to really use these last 2 weeks to try to build some momentum for the NDP to ensure that they could hold on to the official opposition status. For Mike Schreiner, he had a pretty good debate. It was the first time for a lot of people to see him. Would have been a good opportunity to then try to hit the ground running in these last 2 weeks of the campaign, help out some of the candidates where the Greens think they might have a chance. Instead, both of them are going to have to be doing virtual meetings. It's not the same. Really bad timing for both the NDP and the Greens.
Yeah, Mike needed some of that momentum to carry them forward. You've analyzed a lot of elections, Eric, with 2 weeks left to go. What is the likelihood of a major upset here?
Well, I mean, it can certainly happen. And we've seen lots of campaigns in the past where things shifted in the last 2 weeks. Think of Jack Layton and the New Democrats in 2011. Justin Trudeau won his majority government in the last really 2 weeks of the campaign in 2015. I think for here, we're just not seeing a lot of things under the surface that suggest some bandwagon effect is building, that one of the parties is going to get some momentum. But I did mention that the PCs were ahead by about 8 points. If that drops to 5 points, then we're talking about potential minority scenario. And we've heard that Andrew Horwath, Stephen Del Duca, neither of them seem very keen on propping up a Doug Ford minority government. So if that's where we are at the end of this campaign, then election night could be, something to keep an eye on. But as we're seeing things right now, not a lot of signs of movement, but there's still 2 weeks to go.
Well, we will be together election night, keeping an eye on things. That is Eric Grenier. He is a poll analyst and a writer at the website The Rate, and he's running CBC's poll tracker for this election. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Russia says more than 1,700 Ukrainian fighters have now left the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. They were ordered to surrender the facility earlier this week. Tom Perry is tracking the developments now from London.
Russia's military has been releasing video footage of Ukrainian fighters who've left the Azovstal steel plant. It shows fighters being marched out, being searched, loaded onto buses and driven off. There's also footage of men who say they're part of the unit that was defending the plant, being kept in what looks like barracks. The men say they're being treated well, though it's hard to know in cases like this whether there's any coercion going on. These fighters held out for weeks, but this week they were ordered to give up their fight, the Ukrainian government and military hoping to save their lives. The International Committee of the Red Cross has been working to register hundreds of these prisoners. The hope is they can track them, that their families will be able to stay in touch with them. Russia has said these fighters will be treated in accordance with international law, but we have been hearing calls from some Russian lawmakers who want to see these fighters tried for war crimes. Ukrainian officials have spoken about bringing these fighters home, perhaps through a prisoner exchange, but right now that still looks very uncertain. And as all this is happening, G7 finance ministers, including Canada's Chrystia Freeland, are meeting in Germany. Western nations are already supporting Ukraine with weapons to defend itself. The G7 is looking at what more it can do to support Ukraine financially so it can keep its government running and keep up its fight against the Russian invasion. Tom Perry, CBC News, London.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is heading into its 4th month, and almost from the beginning, Russian forces have been accused of war crimes against civilians. One war crimes trial is already underway in Kiev, and Ukrainian officials say there is evidence of thousands more. Briar Stewart reports.
So they shot through your window.
Vitaly Lissy says this is what happened when Russian troops stormed into Borodianka. They shot at his home. A bullet is still lodged in the lock. But that was just the beginning. He says he was tortured by Russian soldiers over 2 days. They started to shoot near my ears, but that was not the worst, he said. The horror started when they put the bag on my head, taped it so that I could barely breathe. At one point, he said he was forced to kneel in a dirt hole for hours. I was thinking how to stay alive. Nothing was in my head, he said. They were beating me hard, and everything was in pain. His case is one of hundreds being investigated by war crimes prosecutors in Borodianka alone. The city was occupied up until the end of March. Several apartment buildings were razed and people buried under the rubble. Local prosecutors say they've identified more than 200 Russian soldiers who they want to investigate for war crimes, but the biggest challenge is tracking them down. Investigators from Ukraine are working alongside dozens from the International Criminal Court. Canada's ambassador in Ukraine met with some of the team today, who briefly toured some of the destruction in Borodianka.
I think it's painstaking work right now, and that's what they're focused on. But the Ukrainians are already prosecuting individuals.
A Russian soldier who pleaded guilty to killing an unarmed 62-year-old man addressed his widow in a court in Kiev. I understand that you will not be able to forgive me, he said. I ask for forgiveness. It's the first war crimes case to go to court in Ukraine, and officials vow it's just the beginning. Russia denies that its soldiers have targeted civilians with deadly brutality. But the 78-year-old has no doubt. He spent most of March hiding in a basement with the rest of his family. It seems to me if it's a war, he says, they should have battles on the front line. But here a lot of civilians got hurt. And here, like elsewhere in Ukraine, officials are still not sure exactly how many have died. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Borodianka.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is at the United Nations in New York. She's taking part in 2 days of meetings on the rising global food security crisis. The risk of famine has increased significantly since the Russian invasion of Ukraine cut off wheat exports from both countries. Joly says Canada wants to increase its exports and will also work to get Ukrainian wheat where it's needed to fight hunger.
What we're also looking at is
to get Ukrainian wheat where it's needed to fight hunger.
What we're also looking at is logistical supports, from sending cargo ships to having food inspectors in Ukraine and in Europe to make sure that the entire supply chain is working, and that eventually countries around the Middle East or Africa are able to receive that wheat, and that we can stop this potential famine.
Joly says Canada's plans include sending cargo ships to Romania and other European countries in an effort to circumvent the Russian blockade of Ukraine's ports. It's estimated there are about 20 million tons of wheat sitting in silos in Ukraine. Combined, Russia and Ukraine holds about a third of the world's wheat supply. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney is planning to meet with his United Conservative Caucus to discuss next steps after stepping down as party leader. He announced his resignation last night following a party leadership review that gave him a majority of support by the slimmest of margins. Julia Wong has more.
The United Conservative Party met in Calgary today to deal with the fallout after Jason Kenney's stunning announcement. Kenney announced that he is resigning after 5 years at the helm of the UCP, a party that he helped create. Last night, he won 51% of the vote in a leadership review, an amount that he acknowledged is not adequate to stay on as leader. A caucus meeting will decide where the party goes from here.
The only thing that I've ever wanted is to be able to have an opportunity to prove to people who we are, and to end the corruption and the cronyism, and to be able to start a new day with hope for Alberta. And that's all I believe that any of us would like to see.
We need to repair our brand. Again, principles, trust, integrity, those are principles and ideas that all Albertans get.
A few people have already thrown their names into the hat to replace Kenney as leader. Former Wildrose Party leader Danielle Smith has already announced her intentions to run. Another former Wildrose leader, Brian Jean, has previously expressed interest in the job.
The healing process can't start until Jason Kenney leaves. He knows that, we know that, and we need to start the renewal process of the UCP.
Today, we're facing a formidable opposition in the legislature that is unified, and we cannot see a fracturing of the Conservative movement along the lines of multiple different political parties.
The UCP does not have much time to waste. It will have to hold a leadership race and then regroup before the next provincial election in May 2023. Julia Wong, CBC News, Calgary.
One of Toronto's most senior councillors will not run for re-election this fall. Anna Bailau is councillor for Ward 9 Davenport, the city's deputy mayor and the chair of the Housing Committee. She's been at City Hall for 12 years and says she'll finish out her term as councillor. Bailau's announcement comes on the heels of two other well-known councillors not continuing in their roles. Joe Cressy resigned earlier this year, and Christian Wong Tam quit to run for the NDP in the provincial election. All right, what do you have for us, Colette? The sun was there today, but there was a little rain in the morning, too.
Yeah, we had that morning rain, and then, so much improvement as the day wore on, and the sun not setting yet until like 20 to 9, as I was mentioning earlier. So still time to enjoy. I was also showing earlier the dew points and just talking about how those will be creeping up. So if we look at our current temperatures, and we're in the low 20s and towards the mid 20s in southwestern Ontario, where the rain hung in there, it's cooler. Over into eastern Ontario, Ontario, but watch when we put in the Humidex here, okay? So it's just going to go up a little bit, just one. That's it for Toronto, up to 23. But notice Windsor. So the humidity is starting to build into southwestern Ontario. And as we go through the overnight and especially into the day tomorrow, we're going to find that it starts to soar. So becoming sticky through the day and warmer as well. We're in between the two systems. So the one that brought the rain earlier has pushed off to the east. This is the one that I'll bring your attention to. Yes, there's some storminess further south, but that's going to keep tracking east. And as it does, not coming up our way towards the lower Great Lakes. But watch what happens with this energy here as we look forward through the models. Yes, we're going to find as we go into the overnight hours some showers or even remnant thunderstorms coming through mostly cottage country. But towards tomorrow morning, a few isolated cells towards the Niagara region. Sandwiched in between the GTA, I'm putting a slight chance for some scattered showers then overnight into tomorrow morning. Very slight chance. Just know that it's there. Saturday, now most of the day tomorrow, once we get through that, by the way, is looking great. Just warm and sticky. Then as we roll forward and take a look at Saturday, yes, some more energy early, but it's really midday that I'm more concerned about. Some of these storms could be strong. So a dry pocket before, a drier pocket after. Not the whole day is rained out, but there will be times when some areas are going to see some pretty heavy downpours, some scattered showers Sunday. Those move out, and then things get more comfortable, and we will clear out eventually on Sunday. So a look at those mild temperatures for tonight, holding in some of the daytime heat through the overnight hours as the air becomes more humid. Feeling like 34, a high of about 27 tomorrow, and then still somewhat muggy into Saturday. That energy for some of these storms, and then becoming more comfortable for those who don't appreciate the humidity as we go to the second half of the holiday weekend. Right.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Food safety investigators are looking for the cause of an illness outbreak that's spoiling the reputation of BC's oyster industry. More than 400 people got sick earlier this year after eating raw oysters traced to about a dozen sites in the heart of BC's most productive shellfish region. The oysters were contaminated with norovirus, which is only spread through human sewage, and the outbreaks are becoming a regular occurrence. Kurt Petrovich has more.
They are synonymous with living well, and the draw is to eat them raw.
Oysters, I've found in running this place, really do transcend class, they transcend race, they transcend age.
But Sean Chesney says for several months, customers stayed away, scared off by recalls of oysters contaminated with norovirus. The tainted shellfish were traced to just 14 growing sites out of about 500 in BC, but the tide of bad publicity hit an industry already hit hard by the pandemic.
It sits with the importers and governments and the food safety officials of other governments and other countries for much longer than it would with the consumer.
Finding and eliminating the culprit is a lot harder than it sounds. It can take as few as just 10 particles of norovirus to make you sick, but there can be up to 10 billion particles of norovirus in just 1 gram of human waste, about the size of a quarter teaspoon.
Test results for norovirus can take weeks, which is why oysters aren't screened for it before shipping. Instead, no less than 3 government departments oversee a raft of regulations to test the waters oysters are grown in and to prevent sewage contamination.
Shellfish farms have been closed as a result.
There's been an outbreak every year since 2016, except during the pandemic. 4 years ago, the cause was likely commercial fishermen illegally dumping onboard waste, according to the BC Centres for Disease Control.
We're not happy about this occurring again, and really we'd like to see more measures put in place to prevent norovirus getting into marine waters in the first place.
The Industry Association suggests scrutinizing more boats for compliance. Last year, in American waters adjacent to BC, the U.S. Coast Guard inspected more than 3,000 vessels of all types looking for sewage problems. Transport Canada conducted about 100 inspections of fishing vessels in all Canadian waters.
A lot of regulations, not a lot of enforcers.
But the cause may not be boats. Coastal housing and industry is pushing closer to BC's oyster farms.
So we start talking about leaky septic systems and stuff like that. Who's going to go check somebody's system? When the tide goes out, you see the...
Investigators say it could be several months before the cause of this latest outbreak is identified, and they believe another one is inevitable. Kurt Petrovich, CBC News, Fanny Bay, British Columbia.
Victoria Day long weekend is almost upon us. It is widely considered the unofficial start to summer, with many people getting out on the water for the first time at cottages and beaches. That's why Toronto and provincial police held a boating safety event today in the hopes of minimizing boating accidents this season.
First and foremost, if you're going to be on the water, wear your life jacket. I'm wearing a self-inflating life jacket here as well. You don't even realize you're wearing it, but when it gets wet, it automatically inflates and it'll keep you above water. Safety equipment in your boat, whatever kind of boat it is, a canoe, a kayak, a beautiful power boat like this, you need to have all the proper safety equipment and make sure it's in proper working condition before you go out.
Police say 27 people died on OPP-patrolled waterways last year. In 2020, police saw a record high of 32 deaths. Officers say the majority of those tragedies happened after a vessel capsized or the victim fell overboard. Only 4 of the victims were wearing life jackets at the time. 12 had either drugs or alcohol in their system. While some might head out onto the water this weekend, others will likely stay on land, taking advantage of Toronto's popular Active TO program that is once again returning for the season. Sections of Lakeshore Boulevard West, Bayview Avenue, and the Meadowway will be closed to vehicles from 7 a.m. Saturday to 7 p.m. on Sunday, allowing bikers and walkers to have free reign of the roads. Lakeshore West will be closed again Monday between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. between Windermere and Stadium Road. Similar closures will likely take effect on weekends throughout the summer as part of the program, which was made permanent last year. The city is also hosting a mobile COVID-19 vaccine clinic along the Lakeshore Active TO route on Monday. First, second, and third, fourth doses will all be available. And Toronto Mayor John Tory is set to head a sales mission to Los Angeles next week to promote the city's film sector.
They tell us each time when we have these very detailed meetings with them that are jammed into basically a 2-day period, they tell us things we need to do in order to make ourselves better. And I'm proud to tell you that we have done everything they've told us to do. We prove ourselves to be good hosts. We prove ourselves to be people who do what we're asked to do to make it a good place for people to produce film, TV, and digital productions.
Tory making that announcement earlier today in Downsview on the future site of a major new film and television production hub. This will be the first trip of its kind since 2019. More than 50 delegates from the city's film sector will join Mayor Tory to report on steps made by the city to increase studio space and grow the workforce. They also hope to deepen their relationships with existing studios and establish new ones here in Toronto. As we head to break, let's take a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX rose by 80 points, the Dow falling by 236. The dollar traded higher at 78.0 cents US. Stay with us, we're coming right back. It started as one woman's cravings for childhood food favorites. When she couldn't find what she wanted in Vancouver, she opened her own restaurant. And when she couldn't find chefs who knew the cuisine, she turned to cooks who knew their way around the house, a home kitchen instead. Zara Premji shares her story.
Do you need help, Auntie?
This female-run business tucked in between construction and traffic on Vancouver's East Broadway is cooking up a storm.
Initially, we had hard time finding chefs because this cuisine is totally new. There is nobody at all who knows what we are cooking, how we are cooking.
Tata Chula was born from the cravings of a pregnant woman looking for the taste of Rajasthan in India, a food that's heavily reliant on lentils, ground spices, and veggies. While she found bits and pieces of her food in other Indian restaurants, there wasn't one place she could go to that served up only Rajasthani dishes. Nidhi Tomar Chaudhary opened the doors of her restaurant in February of last year, but faced a shortage of workers.
And then I was thinking what to do. Then the idea clicked is let's hire some housewives.
Her restaurant filled a need for newly arrived women struggling to find work in Canada.
What I believe in, if a woman is independent, it's a support system for a family.
It's a place where women have had the opportunity to take their business into their own hands.
Let's have a women army. We can win anything, and that's what we are doing here.
While none of them have formal chef training, they are cooks in their own right. Previously serving up daily meals in multi-generational households in India, now given the opportunity to learn a new skill and make money with it.
I am proud of me. I'm not dependent on my husband and my family-in-laws. I'm helping them because I'm making money on my way.
That money giving women the independence outside of their household.
I have a son, I have to support him. He's handicapped, so for his treatment, I need money. So I'm working here. I'm getting money at the same time. I'm enjoying my work also.
And Tomer Chaudhary is eager to grow the business and help out even more.
So anybody who comes like, I'm a woman, I'm looking for work, I'm happy to have her here.
Serving up not just tasty Rajasthani food, but change and opportunity as well. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Back to our top story tonight. A vigil is on the way at Nathan Phillips Square honoring the victims of Saturday's mass shooting in Buffalo. A number of people sharing with us why they felt it was important to attend.
What happened is nothing short of complete tragedy, and a loss of any life needs to be recognized, and especially when it's in the Black community where you're being targeted because of the color of your skin.
To recognize that hatred, no matter where it lives, needs to be dealt with equitably rather than violently.
The fact that something so horrible happened is sadly not surprising, just at the way especially the U.S. seems to be moving these days. So just my friend mentioned that this was happening and suggested that we come, and I thought, why not show support for the tragic victims. Why was that important for you?
So I was talking to one of my colleagues, black colleagues out of North Carolina, and he just said how numb he was. And I said, I understand, because unfortunately we get used to this. And it's sad that we get used to it. But I said, just feel free to express yourself. So from that, I felt it was good that I should come down and support and just show my support.
Yeah, can't get used to it. Let's get a final check of the forecast from Colette.
Thank you, Dwight. Well, watching some storminess that is to the west of the Great Lakes region, but as that's starting to approach, we'll see it kind of dying out. Right now, a lot of lightning strikes there, right? But as they die or lose some of that energy through the overnight, still we'll see in those overnight hours some of those showers going through cottage country with a slight chance that we could see one coming through the city. So that's why the risk is there. 13 tomorrow, Dwight, 27. May not quite get there, but close anyway, and feeling like about 34.
And more on the long weekend tomorrow. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe and have a good night, everybody.